beautiful day in the fall garden. It's October and it's like 75 degrees. There's no wind, nothing. So I just am having one of those days where I need a break. So we're gonna hang out in the garden today. We're gonna do some fall activities, maybe make a fall arrangement, do some harvest. I have some mushrooms to pick, but first we need to empty the compost. Okay, so last spring, 5.5 months ago, underneath these raised beds, I had planted mushroom spawns. You can buy this in sawdust, and I'll put a link down for what I used below. And basically all you do is you layer that sawdust spawn that's been inoculated with the mushroom that you want to grow. You layer that with wood chips, and I did it underneath the beds because I wanted to utilize that space since they're raised up off of the ground. But they actually have been growing better along the perimeters, I think because they're getting more rain, more dampness naturally. If I don't manually water underneath the beds, they're not getting enough rain, and it's been too hot. So I'm getting my first flush of wine cap mushrooms. There is some mycelium under the beds that I did oyster as well, so I'm hoping I get some of those this year, but it's a little bit trickier to get that to fruit. So we're just gonna pick some mushrooms today. This is gonna be my 4th day in a row of harvesting, so there's less than there was at the beginning, but still quite a bit. So for sure not as many today, but look at all this mycelium. All of this life tells me that there will be many more mushrooms to come. This hose link is such a game changer. No kinks, and I never have to coil it back up ever again. Which I know some people don't mind chores like that, but for me, my arthritis, it's not a good thing. October is one of my favorite seasons in the garden because it's kind of this in-between or liminal space where I don't have any big projects that I have to work on, but there's a million little things that I like to do that I can do, and they're more just like for fun and for me. And so this is a time in the garden where I get to really just like savor the season and enjoy the work that I've put in, right? Like, everything's been leading up to this for like 5.5 months. The mushrooms, I just harvested the potatoes, we're putting garlic in, I'm getting cucamelons. Like, there's so many good things happening in the garden and many good things to come in the winter garden that we're making with the hoop house. But right now I'm just saving seeds. I'm enjoying the flowers before they're gone. All sorts of little things that really are like the big things to me and really make me feel like connected to nature. Just being out here in this space, especially with the arches, it feels like another room in my house, and it's my favorite room. Garden snacks. If you've never saved seeds before, I'm going to strongly encourage you to start this year because there's so many reasons to save seeds. It will save you money, it will give you food security, it's free plants. I mean, who doesn't want that? But it's also great for varieties like this New Zealand spinach that's maybe a little bit harder to find in your favorite seed supplier, although I do have a link to some I'll put below in case you don't have any of your own already. With that one especially, you only get like 20 seeds and it doesn't have a great germination rate. So with that, if you're saving your own seeds, there's just far less risk. So these are provider green beans. I save them every year. They're called provider for a reason. They're extremely prolific. I also grow an amethyst variety just because I like to have some variety and color in the garden, but I'll save some of these today. I'm also going to save some of the New Zealand spinach seeds. And with both of these seeds, it's the same, where you want to let them brown and dry out on the plant before you harvest them. You can leave them on there as long as you want, as long as it's before your first frost. You don't want to leave them on there after that because it could cause damage to the seeds in some cases. So we're gonna pull off some of those. I'll show you what the New Zealand spinach seeds look like. They're pretty crazy. It's kind of like a spiky, weird shape. And that's what it looks like when it's green. So you wanna wait till it's brown. This is an area of the garden that I don't show very much because it's totally overgrown. It was supposed to be a wildflower patch and things just kind of got out of control, but there are some in here. I do have these cone flowers that I want to harvest. You want to wait until the petals are totally dry like this one is here. So these ones are not quite ready. And then you cut off this top. I'm not going to do it right this second, but you cut off this top and you let it dry for about a week, and then you put it in a mason jar and shake it, and all the seeds that are kind of hidden in this seed head will just pop right out. I'm in the asparagus patch now, but we've companion planted this wildflower. It's called a dayflower, which for some reason I always have the hardest time remembering, but it's this tiny little blue flower. It's medicinal, and I'm going to save it and dry it for tea. And then I also have these beautiful calendula that I'm going to pick. I've just gone ahead and picked the first few of my pie pumpkins. I love growing pie pumpkins because they're literally exactly the size that you need to make one pie. So I grow like 3 to 5 of these plants every year. The pumpkins themselves store really well, but even once they start to turn, I just roast them all at once, stick them in freezer bags, and throw them in the deep freeze. And we still have pumpkin from doing that last year, so I know we're gonna have more than enough this year. But there's 3 things that you should know if you're picking your pumpkins now too, to make sure that you're curing them properly so that they last as long as possible in storage. And then there's kind of one other little side tip that I'm gonna give after that. The very first thing that you need to keep in mind is the length of the stem. We want at least 1 inch of stem left on that pumpkin in order for it to cure properly. And after you pick them, this is actually one of the few crops that we harvest that you're going to want to wash with soapy water right away. Just wipe them down, because if there's any bacteria on the outside of these pumpkins, it can cause them to mold. And third, if you can, store them out in a sunny location outside after you pick them for about 7 days. It's called field curing. And when we field cure something, it allows the skin to harden further and just fully mature so that they last as long as possible in storage. A lot of people, when they're deciding when to pick their pumpkins, do the fingernail test. And there's a big reason that you might not want to do this. It does work, because if there's no indent, you know that the pumpkin is ripe and that the skin is hard enough to be cured properly. But if it's not ripe enough and your fingernail indents, it causes a breach in the outside layer of that pumpkin. It can cause it to not store properly at all. So I don't generally think it's worth the risk. I usually just wait until the vine dies back as much as possible. Of course, we're always watching for our first frost here as well. We don't want to let them go past that date, but as long as you can leave them out there, the better. Got a beautiful bouquet. We've had a beautiful day in the garden. Make sure you like and subscribe, and let me know if you want to see more kind of day in the life stuff like this.